I can't be a pessimist because I'm alive. To be a pessimist means that you have agreed that human life is an academic matter. So I'm forced to be an optimist. I'm forced to believe that we can survive whatever we must survive. But the Negro in this country, the future of the Negro in this country is precisely as bright or as dark as the future of the country. It is entirely up to the American people and our representatives. It is entirely up to the American people whether or not they're going to face and deal with and embrace this stranger whom they've maligned so long.
What's up, everybody? Eli the Wizard, and in this video, however long it's going to turn out, it's going to be a recollection of a bunch of various topics of things I've seen, heard, and learned about the world in America in the last 5 years. And this video is going to be about a bunch of various topics of societal, racial, misogynistic, and the systematic historical culture of America and its infectious influence on all human beings today. Now, as a preamble, or I guess a warning to those about to view this, I'm going to keep it as real as possible because this information, I believe, is more important getting out there than fame or $1 billion, even though the latter would definitely be nice. So, yeah, this is just going to be a long video of various facts and opinions of things I've seen and heard about America. And I hope you enjoy it. And if you want to directly support me, I'll put all my links into the description. Also, all the sources and other Black video essay creators that you should check out after watching this video. So, without further ado, let's get started. Now, I personally and wholeheartedly believe there are only three reasons as to why you possibly don't know the true infrastructure and system in place in America. And number one is that you've been lied to. Number two is that you're not directly affected or targeted, so you don't see or care about what's actually happening. And to the people that it's actually happening to, you probably couldn't relate to their pain anyway. And number three being that you're a child. And obviously, children get a free pass because they haven't fully developed and they don't understand the world like adults do or should. The majority of the world, however, is living a lie, and which is not your fault entirely, but you should always do your own research and ask questions when they arise, even to your parents, teachers, anyone that's giving you any information, really. And the people that create and spread false lies or narratives are more often than not the ones wielding the sword. The 1%, the CIA, rich white people, Congress, the church, colonizers, you know, they literally have the power to rewrite and adjust history to make themselves look as good and as nice as they want to, only letting people in the door of capitalist success they see fit as good to enter. This includes making everyone else conform to new standards of life and laws and giving up on whatever traditions they believe just to succeed in America. In this case, if you're on the winning team, why would you ever be concerned about anyone else? I mean, you're not going to show your wealth and knowledge because, in your mind, everyone has equal opportunity to make it in America, right? I mean, just got to pull yourself up the bootstraps and seize that American dream. A lot of these people who are on the winning team were most likely born into wealth. They have rich parents, uncles, grandparents, cousins, people that can literally pass the torch to them and make sure all the wealth and opportunity stays within their circle of people. They can literally be molded into the proper framework to maintain these traditions. Now, what is and who is a part of the winning team? And who are the losers? Well, since the start of America's history, it has been the idea of white supremacy that rules this country. And all those that support its ideals are on the winning team. And the losers, of course, being Africans and Black Americans. Now, white supremacy is the belief that all white people or Caucasians are superior and are at the pinnacle of all positions of power, hierarchy, social status, and pretty much everything else.
How often do you think about being white?
Not very often. I really don't think about it a lot at all.
Hardly ever. It's just me.
Racially, do you see yourself as a white person?
No, I see myself as a person.
So do you ever think about being a white person?
No.
Probably not very often.
Not really. Sometimes I got a lot of Black friends. Sometimes we make jokes about it and everything, but
not really. It doesn't matter to me whether I'm white, pink, or purple, or black. I don't care.
Depends on the social situation. Sometimes I'll be the only white person in the room when it's reversed, when the tables are sort of flipped.
How do you identify racially? Do you see yourself as a white man?
I think that everybody is equal in the eyes of the Lord.
So you don't see yourself as a white person?
Not as much as most people. I think when it's all said and done, we're equal, and definitely inside and outside.
But I don't know if I ever considered myself white or thought about it. At one point I'm sure I did, but I don't really have any recollection of when it was, which I think is a total reflection of whiteness, of never having to sort of contemplate why people treat you the way they do.
To be white means to be a member of a dominant racial group in a society that I consider white supremacist. And to be white in a white supremacist society, not just a racist society, because that's almost too generic, to be white in a white supremacist society is to be able to have the luxury of oblivion, to be oblivious to the injustices, to be oblivious to racial privilege, to be oblivious, frankly, to one's own identity. So it is, in a sense, to be invisible to oneself.
This mindset of whiteness and the racial power structure has been passed down for generations and all across the globe as early as the 15th century, and supplementary implanted into all forms of society since the transatlantic slave trade. And before anyone asks or comments, yes, slavery was being practiced for centuries throughout all the world, even in Africa. But earlier forms of slavery were more like servants than anything. You served under someone for several years, and before being released, you could still marry. Family members could even pay for your ransom and you'd be released. And slavery was also misfortune of war, capture, and raids. It was white supremacy and white people that invented what we know as modern slavery, fueled by racial implications of specifically white masters and black slaves. White Europeans that came to settle in the Americas found it difficult to enslave native people, as they were already familiar with the land, and many revolts and deaths, along with sickness, made enslaving West Africans more profitable and easier to detain and control them in a foreign land. Plus, Europeans knew they could easily make money faster using slavery than having to pay a servant, because you don't need to pay a slave for hard labor. America's foundations and social hierarchy were built and rely on skin color, placing white people, specifically white men, at the top and black people somewhere below the bar, classified as not even being human. Europeans that migrated to America were no longer British, Russian, Irish, or German. You were just white.
Well, you can only be something if there's something else to negate it, so I guess we became white. I guess we're white because there's a bunch of other races to set us off.
So how did English people and German people get turned into white people?
came to America?
By assimilation, by living, by living in the U.S. It's just the smorgasbord, you know.
I have no idea. I honestly have no idea.
Do you know how they got turned into British and Scotch people? How those people got turned into white people?
No.
Have you ever thought about that?
I'm not a history buff.
I think culture did that over time. It's like certain words that we use in our language are not our words. They're other nations, other words that come from other languages.
How did the Irish get turned into white people then? That's a good question.
I think a lot of it was early assimilation in the United States, a lot of European ethnics coming over, assimilating for a variety of reasons. Primary one being a desire to elevate their socioeconomic status. So to get jobs, to find places to live, a lot of the Europeans altered their last names to sound more mainstream. A lot of them changed the clothing that they wore, the foods they ate. So there was this, some might call it assimilation. I think of it more as Anglo-conformity, conforming to this kind of dominant white culture.
Same with all African people that were enslaved and forced to come here, who are now just all classified as black or Negroes. An orchestrated assimilation that stripped individuals of any personality and identity before you even spoke to them. But white people aren't white and black people aren't black. I mean, if you had to describe my skin color, you'd say brown, right? You see, this mental and physical class system is the very basis of racism. It's the way we can easily identify who and what people are, what they represent, what they deserve, and what they can attain, and those that walk free and those that are detained. The African people that were forced and enslaved to come to America were reduced to cattle, property, not persons, a commodity that could be bought and sold, all for the profit of white people. They were forced upon slave ships and shackles from Western Africa. Some ships had nets on the side of them to prevent them from losing property and sales of people and committing suicide. Some of the first slaves were around 20 Africans taken to Jamestown in 1619. The more slaves that were brought into America, the more laws were made to solidify their enslavement and create more submissive slaves. Children born from a slave woman were slaves at birth. Lifelong servitude was enacted to prevent freedom, even in the case of converting into Christianity. Any refusal or rebellion at all, 9 times out of 10, resulted in death, the master free of all punishment if his slave happens to die in correcting them. Africans were forced to lose their original names, given the last name of their master. African men and women were brutalized daily, being whipped, hanged, branded, castrated, mutilated, fed to crocodiles, boiled in sugar, forced upon sexually, forced to practice homosexuality and incest on each other. And this is where the term motherfucker comes from. Slave patrols, established as early as the 1700s, existed solely for the purpose of maintaining fear, preventing uprising, and the capture of runaway slaves. This was America's first form of police. Christianity was used as the basis and justification to enslave and torture uncivilized Africans in America. But for those that converted, they weren't allowed to go free, and they weren't taught to read or write, specifically out of fear of a rebellion. Even during the country's Revolutionary War against the British in 1775, America's fear of rebellion halted white generals and citizens from recruiting black Americans to help. Though black slaves only had freedom on their mind at the time and would have sided with anyone that promised it to them. With the Declaration of Independence's contradicting line, all men are created equal, in the end, most, if not all, black people on both sides of the war were re-enslaved, sent back to their masters, or killed trying to escape to the British Islands. But I guess the loophole was that slaves were never considered people in the first place. solidified further by the 3/5 Clause of 1788, granting slave-harboring states greater political power with every 3/5 of slaves equating to one free man. Slaves ran to the North, where the idea behind slavery was deemed wrong and illegal, but the motive to actually help free black folks was not practiced. Many suffered from poverty, and though free, still struggled just to survive. The separation of North and South ideals grew higher and higher with the aid of the cotton gin made in 1793, which Southerners used as fuel to expand their wealth and the justification of enslaved black people. In 1808, Congress made a law prohibiting the importation of any more slaves into the United States. This, however, did not stop white slave masters from controlling the sexual exploitation of black women, with public nude auctioning, forced intercourse for pleasure, and slave increase, and the act of separating and selling their children at any age range, and the hypersexualization of the black body. Features people would appropriate and try to imitate to this very day, but we'll get more on that later. Slavery sparked the mental and physical divide among black people in America, such as the field Negroes and the house Negroes, the slaves who slept in the master's house and dressed and ate with him, and those who slept and were forced to sleep outside. Those who worshiped their masters, coons, and those who sought freedom from their oppressors. Arguably, the origins of the whole light-skinned versus dark-skinned debate. Gotta say, how bad real hurt for this kid. I'm clean. This also falls into the realm of colorism, a prejudiced outlook that favors and admires lighter-skinned individuals while simultaneously putting down or discriminating against dark-skinned individuals. And a desire to want to live at the white man's level, a desire that still blinds black men and women to this day. The famous revolts that took place throughout history, and the ones that we know happened but aren't documented, clearly showed the disgust of American values and held true to give me liberty or give me death. Gabriel's Rebellion in 1880 and Denmark Vesey's Rebellion in 1822 were two planned revolts that never saw fruition due to internal traitors within their communities. Nat Turner's Rebellion in 1831, however, did see the light. He and his followers managed to kill several slave owners' families before being stopped and dispersed by militia, where Nat Turner escaped and was later found and convicted. He was hung and skinned on November 11th of that year. Each time a revolt was either planned or executed, many innocent black folks who had nothing to do with these revolts, around 200 in the case of Nat Turner's revolt, were killed by angry white mobs in an act to snuff out any more plans of rebellion and liberation and to instill fear into the black people. Tension between North and South and the question of should Negroes be free would boil over into what we know as the American Civil War. It was a battle that would determine the future foundations of the country, a battle that would decide whether America would be a pro-slavery state or not. There were anti-slave movements and ideals throughout all of America, both black and white, but it can't be ignored that Southerners were making too much money off of black labor and weren't going to give up on slavery whatsoever. In 1830, there were around 2 million slaves living in America, worth over about $1 billion back then. Anti-slave meetings hosted former captives that told horror stories of their lives and family histories as slaves. And with civilization spreading westward and the ridding of natives of their land and Mexicans, the question of whether or not these new states would practice slavery only made tensions grow higher.
They are haunting voices from the past, not actors reading a script or scholars reading a text, but the actual voices of men and women, Americans, who were born in slavery.
My name is Fountain Hughes. I was born in Charlottesville, Virginia. My grandfather belonged to Thomas Jefferson. My grandfather was 115 years old when he died. And now I am 101 years old. Some people didn't have no beds when they were slaves. You want to sleep on the floor. parrot here and parrot there, just like a lot of wild people. We didn't know nothing. Didn't like look at no book.
Dred Scott, an enslaved man who lived with his wife Harriet in a free territory of Wisconsin, sued the St. Louis Circuit Court in 1846 for their due freedom. They had been living with their enslaver at Fort Snelling, held for bondage in a free section, but were then moved to a slave state, a case that spanned 11 years until reaching the Supreme Court, where in 1857, the Supreme Court stated enslaved people were not citizens of the United States and therefore could not expect any protection from the federal government or the courts. The opinion also stated that Congress had no authority to ban slavery from a federal territory. This was all just fuel added to the already growing flame of slavery that divided the North and South territories of America. When President Lincoln was elected in November 6, 1860, his siding with the Union against the expansion of slavery was the last straw for Southerners. The following January, South Carolina was the first state to secede from the Union of the United States, followed by Mississippi, Florida, Alabama, Georgia, Louisiana, Texas, and then eventually Virginia, Arkansas, Tennessee, and North Carolina. These 11 states eventually formed the Confederate States of America, and they were ready to defend their livelihood, which was the act of slavery. Even whispers of Lincoln's assassination during his first inauguration speech in March spread through D.C. The Confederates were the first to shoot and make the first attack at Fort Sumter, South Carolina, in April. Black men were ready and willing to fight for the Union and for their freedom, though Lincoln turned them down as to not alienate Northern whites and the slave boarding states that still remained loyal to the Union. That August, the Confiscation Act was passed by Congress, an act that allowed any properties, including slaves, to be taken by Union possession if said property goes against the government of the United States. Lincoln again pushed against this act as he did not want any more middle ground states to go into secession in favor to protect slavery and fight against the Union. Many slaves were forced into labor by the Confederation, but weren't allowed to take part in any of the actual combat. Harriet Tubman, who escaped captivity from Maryland in 1849, was one of the most prominent figures in American history and Black liberation. She single-handedly returned to Maryland from Philadelphia and back again, escorting as many slaves as possible to free them, starting with her close family and then anyone she could manage to bring. Tubman never lost a passenger during any of her infiltrations to the South, and during the Civil War, Tubman provided services as a cook, nurse, and a spy for the Union, lending routes, and was also considered the first woman to enlist in the U.S. military, though she would not receive commendations for this until much later in life. Lincoln's main motivation was to protect and sustain the Union. He tried implementing slow forms of emancipation, giving compensation to slave owners, a second confiscation act in 1862 that allowed Union-controlled territories in the South to forever free civilian and military slaves. Being the head representative of the U.S., everyone demanded he do more than he was willing to do at the time. With both sides of the war losing thousands of American lives each day, Lincoln took the Union victory over Antietam and Antietam to act. Lincoln issued a preliminary emancipation, stating that by the next year, all slaves would be set free unless the Confederacy came to some kind of decision. The Confederates refused Lincoln's offer, and on January 1st, 1863, the Emancipation Proclamation was set into motion. This was a changing point in the American Civil War. The Emancipation Proclamation directly shifted Lincoln's original goals to support the Union into now being the end goal of stopping slavery in America altogether. The proclamation, however, did not free all slaves in America, only the slaves residing in Confederate territory, as there were still around 1 million slaves living in bordering states of the Union. And the slaves living in the South were still forced to help the Confederacy. Some didn't even know they were free until months later. It did, however, significantly siphon the bulk of Confederate labor and finally allowed around 200,000 black soldiers to aid in the Union. Though these black Union soldiers still struggled and had to face segregation and discrimination. given inferior guns, and paid less than half of what white soldiers were making at the time. Some black Union soldiers even refused pay for months to protest their unfair treatment, and were eventually granted equal pay and improved conditions later on. The 13th Amendment, passed by Congress January 1st, 1865, officially abolished slavery in the United States, freeing over 4 million black men, women, and children. Through a mix of black people escaping Confederate territories, white people on both sides refusing to fight, people that claimed black soldiers were stealing jobs from white people, overall depression, food shortage, riots, strikes, and inflation, the Confederation ultimately surrendered on April 18, 1865.
Harriet Smith, remembering what she saw as a small girl during the final days of the Civil War.
We said, I stood on that picket fence all day long, seeing them soldiers going back to San Antonio and different places. Colored soldiers in droves. That's right along by our house. Our home is a two-story house.
These recorded memories were among thousands of interviews done with ex-slaves in the 1930s and 40s.
Can you remember slavery days very well?
Of course, I remember all our white folks, and all the names of them, all the children. Call every one of the children's names.
Who did you belong to?
Jim Button, the baby boy.
The results of these digitally enhanced recordings are arresting, almost unbelievable. The idea of hearing the voices of actual slaves from the plantations of the Old South is as powerful, as startling really, as if you could hear Abraham Lincoln or Robert E. Lee speak.
Lincoln, however, was assassinated 4 days earlier by John Wilkes Booth in an attempt to restore what little pride the Confederacy had left within them. He never saw the end of the war. Juneteenth, which we now celebrate in our modern time, marks the day Union officials arrived in Texas to set free over 250,000 slaves that were still in encampment. It was without a doubt the start of a new era for the United States, the start of what would be a multi-race society, one that granted black people their freedom, but didn't guarantee them safety from discrimination, segregation, and the many more decades of hate in America. A hate that resonates not just in the defeated South, but in the very foundations of the country's ideals. Now, thanks to white people and white supremacy and their switch from the human race and race families to colored races, human beings have since been divided, categorized, stereotyped, based solely on features that none of us have control over. Everyone's ancestor roots started in Africa, and they all later migrated to other parts of the world. Food, placement on the earth, and melanin deficiency is what affects the color and shade of your skin. Everyone is prejudiced. We cannot look at certain races, genders, or anything without thinking of some horrid preconceived notion about them. Like how in our society we believe that all men are superior to women in every way possible, or that all Asians are smart, or that all Indians smell, or that all Mexicans love tacos, or that all black people steal, or that all white people are, I guess, corny. Which is interesting, isn't it? Thinking of stereotypes of white people, it's a lot harder than it is for all other races. Probably because they position themselves in being white as normal or perfect, privileged, and deserving. White people built a curriculum that subconsciously teaches you they're superior without explicitly having to say so, and tricking you into falling in line with the rest of your oppressed ancestors. We see it in all forms of media, stereotypes, cultural appropriation. It's all a skewed, uncanny projection of how we think the world is, and further solidify these projections about people and even protect these ideas because it has been so ingrained within our culture.
Yo, what's wrong?
Happy Father's Day, Dad.
Happy Father's Day, Dad.
Yo, where's your dad?
He'll be back soon.
False alarm, false alarm. Where's Batch?
Woulda, what's up, man? Hey, y'all, I'm good. Come on, dude. I'm gonna just hit back. Come on. I'm good, man. Have fun without me.
West side, when we ride, come equipped with.
Come on, guys. It's 2015.
Right. Let's go back. Now give me all your fucking money. Yo, let's take this pic real quick.
Right.
Go ahead.
Say cheese.
Go, go, shit, it's a photo bomb,
Bruh.
I could not be a slave because I wouldn't know how to act. Nigger, why did you stop? I've been picking all day. I'm tired. It's hot out here. I don't care. Get back to work. Can I at least get some water? No. Oh my god. Spit in my mouth.
Man, I'm tired of this, man. Man, it's hot as hell out here. I don't think I can do this today.
Hey, you don't got that much longer to go. Don't you only pick like 2 pounds of cotton a day?
Wow. I know you're not talking, mister. Nobody want to buy me because I got 7 toes.
Alright? I still run away better than you.
Oh, okay.
How many days was I gone last time I ran away? 5.
So what?
What about you? Mr. 2-day escape?
Oh.
What you talking about?
2-day escape. Okay, that's why I breed better kids than you. Master said I got the strongest kids on the plantation.
Didn't your youngest son get hung last week?
Oh, snap.
He a wuss for dying in 10 seconds. My son would have lasted 20.
All right, guys, let's calm down.
Well,
Well, at least Master ain't clapping my wife every night. Why you think she a house slave, huh? Why you think that? Every night, that's all I hear.
She has a bad back.
Yeah, that's because Master blew her back out, Thomas. What do you think? Hey, hey, hey! Cut out all that yabbering!
Hey, bitch, my massa. 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 Bitch, my massa.
Call me back, I told her call me Rocky. She say she not gonna call me that. You say you come with a lot, well baby I want all of that.
Yeah, hey, niggas on tweet with me, I ain't feel my 30 yet. Hey, it's just me, my bad little bitch and Percocet. Hey, shut on the freak on me, say she want Percocet. Hey, shut on the freak on me.
I think you know where this about to go.
Mommy! Boy, what the hell you want? Look what I can do. I'm beating your ass.
Do you understand that none of you will get
it that way?
Do you guys understand the consequences of what you've just done?
No.
You guys are not going to get into a college. You guys are not going to get any scholarships because this is a hate crime.
We all dropped out of high school. It's okay.
I still don't think it's appropriate for you guys to be doing this. It's really not funny.
Because it has been so ingrained within our culture, like the word nigger. A word that carries a history of hatred towards all black people. A word specifically made to belittle, demonize, and discriminate all black people. It is, without a doubt, the most anti-black, racist creation next to slavery itself. Today you can hear this word everywhere in music, TV, movies. Black children say it. Mothers call their kids it. Inanimate objects are referred to this. Non-blacks, of course, use it just as much as black people do now.
Damn, I forgot my wallet.
Chill, how much you need?
$20.
Got you, bro.
My nigga.
My nigga, my nigga. My nigga, my nigga.
Damn, my phone's at 1%. Oh, dude, I got an extra charger.
My nigga.
My nigga, my nigga. My nigga, my nigga. My motherfucking nigga.
Hey, I'm that nigga now.
No, can't say that.
I buy the gourmet expensive stuff because when I drink it, I want to taste it. But you know what's on my mind right now? It ain't the coffee in my kitchen. It's the dead nigger in my garage.
Oh, Jimmy, don't even
Well,
worry
no,
about
no, no,
it.
look at me, don't think about anything. I want to ask you a question. When you came pulling in here, did you notice a sign out in the front of my house that said dead nigger storage?
Jimmy, you know I ain't seen no shit.
Did you notice a sign in the front of my house that said dead nigger storage?
No, I didn't.
You know why you didn't see that sign? Why? Because it ain't there, because storing dead niggers ain't my fucking business. That's why.
One less lonely nigga. One less lonely nigga. One less lonely nigga. There's gonna be one less nigga. If I kill you, I'll be part of the KKK. Then there'll be one less lonely nigga. There's gonna be one less lonely nigga.
Hey, my nigga!
Rachel. Excuse me.
Don't ever say that.
Oh, nigga, you gay.
Gotta dish you. My niggas be cocking pistols. Shots split you. Fuck splitting the profits split you. 6% of y'all niggas is just pretend. Clicks with click. Pussy niggas stick with dick. Niggas act bully and blast for the fast pity. My order was fully. Plenty of niggas practicing me.
This is sick. My crew is big and it keeps getting bigger. That's cause Jesus Christ is my nigga.
And just because you pronounce it differently or change its spelling does not take away what it truly means or the significant history behind it. Because if it did, you wouldn't get mad when white people say it. Now, personally, I hate it. And if I could, I'd remove its existence from the world and our vocabulary entirely. And if you use this word or its variations, you're just furthering its spread and hatred in society. Many genres, trends, slang, clothing, hairstyles, and other various aesthetics that represent our culture started from a black person. You may not want to admit it, or it's been used by so many non-black people that you don't even know its origin. Black people are the most creative and most copied group of people on the earth. So many inventions and ideas that were coined by black people have been flat out stolen and deemed as the work of someone else for centuries.
You know, the big butt is in, having the big lips is in, things that, you know, I think every black woman can remember their childhood being made fun of. Like, it's now beautiful, but not on us.
I have never thought in my life I could wear cornrows with an evening gown on a red carpet.
What's considered ghetto is now popular. Big lips all of a sudden is the trend when all along we've always had full lips.
The white girl with the big booty. We've had big booties our whole life.
And why does my culture have to be like a costume? Like I can just try this on and look cute for this day and then just throw it away.
Some greater American culture has a fascination with taking whatever has been done by black people for years and years and years and putting it on a white girl and calling it the new trend. And you just kind of have to sigh, roll your eyes. Okay, sure, girl. Whatever. Let me show you what your next trend's gonna be.
Only nowadays are we actually tracing back to the original inventor. And so much African American vernacular English is ripped from us every day. Many people of our time categorize it as just being Gen Z slang.
Not me giving a eulogy. No, but seriously, today we're here to mourn the loss of our homie, John. RIP. No cap, this is the saddest I've ever been. It's probably up there with when my AirPods died when I was listening to Olivia Rodrigo.
I was there when that happened. I was there.
John's death is an L for sure.
His death was pretty sus.
Yeah, it was pretty sus. He choked on a glizzy, so it's not that deep. But he will be 6 feet deep.
This is so sad.
Once we've all paid our respects, there's going to be an after party. What's the vibe gonna be like? Super chill and low key. John's parents provided food.
Does the food slap?
Oh, it's fire. Straight bussin'. Unequivocally fucking busting. He loved that TikTok. No bitches? He loved that meme. Okay, so it's giving sad, so I'm gonna stop.
We now return to the thrilling conclusion of Gen Z Hospital.
And look, you're free to enjoy whatever culture and product you want to, but if you're gonna mimic or be a part of the culture, Just make sure you actually knows where it come from and at least try and pay some respect where it's due. Our true history is glossed over at best because if you really know what happened and were told things exactly how they went and how the world works, your entire mindset would change, which isn't a bad thing because you're supposed to learn and evolve as you get older. But if we keep erasing and ignoring history, we'll just keep making the same mistakes over and over and over again, dooming the next generation to damnation. Though we've seen that anyone that tries to challenge this system of hierarchy and white supremacist order, they either get blacklisted, deemed crazy, and pushed out of society, silenced, made to leave the country, or they get assassinated. And just because a law is passed, that law won't stop people from living how they want to. They'll just be a little bit more careful of how they act. The 14th Amendment in 1868 stated all people born in the U.S. were U.S. citizens by right of jurisdiction, and no state law could take that away from them. Yet, the Supreme Court themselves said it could not prevent individuals from discriminating and segregating schools with colored sections, anti-voting laws, and refusals to let black and white people interact almost at all. The Memphis Massacre of May 1866, New Orleans Massacre in July, Camellia Massacre in September, Opelousas Massacre 1868, Colfax Massacre 1873, Vicksburg Massacre 1874, Clinton, Mississippi Massacre 1875, Springfield Massacre 1908, Elaine Massacre 1919, the Tulsa Massacre 1921. Around 3,438 Black Americans were lynched between 1882 and 1951, 161 in 1892. And these are all just the horrible events that were actually documented. These horrific, demonic acts of hate were always deemed as black riots when in reality, it's just acts to maintain white supremacy and suppress the black community as much as possible. There hasn't been a single moment since the transatlantic slave trade that African and black people haven't been oppressed. People love to say black people are always complaining or lazy, but no one on this earth can relate to the treatment black people have endured for the last 450 years to just enjoy their God-given right as being human beings.
ABC's Pierre Thomas tells us about private warnings some parents give about unspoken rules.
Just about everybody in the black community is talking about Trayvon Martin.
That could be any of us, you know, any of our children, our brothers.
I don't want to be like Trayvon Martin's mom, burying my child.
Today, suburban moms Racine Tucker Hamilton and LaGreta Dennis are giving their sons specific instructions for survival. The uncomfortable conversations necessary for generations still taking place.
Once they started looking like men, which is about 14 or 15, even though they're children, I basically told them, now you're perceived as a black man in society.
Even a trip to the store is not routine.
I tell them, always, you have to keep your hands out of your pocket because people will perceive that as threatening, or they may think that you've stolen something.
If you walk in a building and you have your hood on from being outside, take that hood off. If you go in the store and you buy something, always put your item, even if it's a pack of gum, get it in a bag and get your receipt.
The moms also say don't stand too close to people, particularly women. And when stopped by police,
don't reach for anything. Roll down the window, be respectful, ask the officer if you could please call your parents. And I want to be on the phone to hear the conversation.
Their sons, honor roll students, still feel the pressure.
But sometimes when I'm riding the metro, like, I'll walk right by somebody and they'll kind of like tighten up.
It is frustrating. It kind of gets me kind of angry.
It's painful. It's just painful to think that you have to think 2 steps ahead just because of the color of your skin.
It is painful, but unfortunately, it's a reality for us. At the end of the day, I want my sons to come home alive.
Diane, what struck me is that these women are having these conversations with their sons every day.
A white police officer in Fort Worth, Texas, has just been charged with murder for shooting and killing a black woman in her home over the weekend. Now, that officer resigned from the force today as well, and police are asking the FBI to look into the case. The family of a Tatiana Jefferson is outraged that the police officer who shot and killed the 28-year-old inside her own home is not in handcuffs.
This man murdered someone. He should be arrested.
Fort Worth police released body camera video showing the officer, Aaron Dean, outside the house with a flashlight.
Put your hands up! Show me your hands!
The video shows he never identified himself as a police officer before firing a shot into a window where Jefferson's 8-year-old nephew was just steps away.
What would have happened if that little boy went to the window instead of his auntie? He saw her when she fell.
It began when a neighbor called the Fort Worth police number for non-emergencies. He requested a wellness check because he knew Jefferson's mom was ill.
Well, the front doors have been open since 10 o'clock, and I haven't seen anybody moving around.
What I witnessed was 3 or 4 tactical officers come from around the corner, seemed like. In less than a minute, I heard a gunshot.
Hollow eyes and no emotion, the face of an accused killer.
This is the case of State versus Dylan Roof.
2 heavily armed guards at his sides, even as those families sobbed, Roof barely uttering more than a syllable.
What is your age?
21.
You're 21 years old. Are you employed?
No, sir.
A 21-year-old high school dropout, now charged with 9 counts of murder in one of the deadliest attacks on a house of worship in U.S. history.
My mission is to bring justice for this community, and especially for the victims in this case.
And tonight, a new look at those final moments inside this historic Charleston church. That's Roof, the only blonde at the table during that Bible study, in a short Snapchat clip taken by one of his victims before the shooting. Now, police search warrants say after the group spent an hour reading and praying, Roof stood up, pulled out a handgun, and opened fire, shooting each of his victims multiple times, standing over one of them and uttering what investigators call a racially inflammatory statement. Police say among the people who contacted authorities when they saw his picture, his own father and uncle. Now Roof is in isolation here. Police say it's for his own protection, and the flags at this jail flying at half-staff to honor the very people he is accused of killing. The Roof family releasing a statement tonight offering prayers and condolences to the victims, saying words cannot express our shock, grief, and disbelief. His friends telling me it was a plan 6 months in the making, fueled by Roof's unabashed racism.
He thought that the black in general as a race was bringing down the white race.
This photo on Instagram tonight raising even more questions about those beliefs. Roof posing on his car with the Confederate flag license plate.
Please. Pull him in. No, you can't just see that. Pull him in. I can't choke. I can't breathe. Please. My wrist, man. Please. I can't take that, man. I can't. I'm laying on the ground.
You know that's bogus right now, bro. You know it's bogus. You can't even look at me like a man because you a bum, bro.
Mama, I love you. Reese, I love you.
You got hobble?
My kids, I love them.
You just gonna choke him like that? Yeah, I know that's what you want to do. I'm not scared of you, bro. You're a fucking pussy ass dude, bro. What? Bro, look, well, you should check on him. He's not responsive right now.
Back off.
He's not responsive.
Get off the street before
He's
you're responsive. Okay, and you in those.
He's not responsive right now. He's not responsive right now, bro. No, bro, look at him. He's not responsive right now, bro.
Thank you for calling CNN.
There are definite feelings about this craziness that's going on in America for the last 400 years. This is just what's current. This is what's in the current news cycle. We've been targeted since we've been here. 400 years of being terrorized by a white supremacist.
I am a 62-year-old African-American woman, wife, mother, grandmother. I lived through the 60s and the 70s being called a I thought by the time my grandkids were born, this would be over. They wouldn't have to be afraid. Now I'm afraid, again, And I'm mad. I'm angry. I'm hurt. And I'm scared.
This shooting at the supermarket does not change how we feel. We've been feeling unsafe for decades, and nothing has been done. So it's just kind of crazy that people want to know how we feel now. We feel the same now as we felt yesterday and the day before that and the year before that and the year before that.
So I'm sitting here asking myself, what kind of world did I just bring my brown babies into? We can't do anything. We can't go to the grocery store. We can't go to church. We can't go to the mall. We can't go to the movies. And all those people are gone because this kid was indoctrinated with so much hate.
This hate and this white supremacy makes me feel unwanted in my own country and unsafe in my own country. I know that racism is everywhere, but I don't feel like racism should cost me my life.
We have to try to make changes from the top down, and I just don't see it changing anytime soon for the better, because we don't have the good proper leadership here in the United States, and so because of that, looks like I'm going to have to leave.
I'm exhausted. It's suffocating. And I'm completely fed up. There has to be change, and we need it soon.
It's a pretty terrifying feeling to know that the people that are smiling at you, walking past you in the park one day, could be the very ones that walk into the store and kill you or your loved ones that very evening. It's a very frightening place to be, America, for African Americans.
Someone decides to drive 2.5 hours to go and take out their anger and their upset on people simply because they're brown. Like, let that sink in. Let that sink in.
I noticed how not a hair shuffled, not a shirt ruffled, no problem when they put the handcuffs on him. He wasn't even put to the ground. He just killed 10 people. There is a war on black people in this country, and it's been going on for 400 years. And I just don't know how long that black people are going to keep on taking this shit.
College students, they say there is a white supremacist student among their ranks, and they're trying to get rid of this student. They do not want the individual on campus. So let me give you the background to this. Let's put up the picture full mass here. Very interesting and also sad. Columbia, Missouri. Students at the University of Missouri are demanding a white supremacist student, according to them, be expelled for making vile, racist comments. Meg Miller posted a horrific racist joke on her Instagram following the recent killing of black football students at a university. It was the University of Virginia. She said, and I quote, "If they would have killed 4 more," and she says N words, "we would have the whole week off." That was her comment. Her Instagram, which can no longer be found, states that she is unapologetically conservative. Okay, there's more. Miller is president of University of Missouri's white supremacist right-wing extremist organization known as Turning Point USA. Turning Point USA spreads the same great replacement extremist ideology that was included in the manifesto to the Buffalo mass killer who massacred 10 black people at a grocery store in Western New York earlier this year. That replacement theory is also held as a fundamental ideology of the KKK.
A group of white men at the Malice Port Resort in South Africa tried to keep 2 brothers aged 18 and 13 from using the resort's swimming pool. Video captured by the sister of the 2 boys shows the alleged incident that took place at the pool. The video shows a white man slapping the 13-year-old, who was then thrown back into the pool. A man holds the teen underwater. This new surveillance has been released showing the moments before the attack. Police are now launching an investigation into this assault. And part of the reason we like to have a global perspective on things, particularly within the African American or the African diaspora, is that white supremacy is not an American invention. It does not just happen here. It happens happens globally. You can look at the experience of refugees in Ukraine. You can look at people seeking asylum from Northern Africa and Italy and France who are experiencing discrimination.
Well, I said if I were black, they'd have killed me a long time ago. And if I were black and saying the things I say, I wouldn't be alive.
Bullshit! No, you're not gonna say I'm sorry there's racism. No, I do not have to ask you nicely. I consider this exercise an injection of the live virus of racism.
I watched my students become what I told them they were. I watched little, wonderful, brown-eyed white people become vicious, ugly, nasty, discriminating, domineering people in the space of 15 minutes. I watched brilliant, little, blue-eyed, white Christian children become timid and frightened and angry and unable to learn in the space of 15 minutes. If you do that with a whole group of people for a lifetime, you change them psychologically. You convince those who are analogous to the brown-eyed people that they are superior, that they are perfect, that they have the right to rule.
Did you learn anything this morning?
I think I learned from the experience of feeling like I was in a glass cage and I was powerless. I realized this morning that there were very few times in my life that I've ever been discriminated against, very few.
And you convince those who take the place of the blue-eyed students that they are less than.
How did they feel yesterday? Down like a dog on a leash.
If you do that for a lifetime, what do you suppose that does to them? You find out that there are people of color who refuse to live down to our expectations of them. I am now watching, at the national level, that exercise that I did based on eye color being reenacted in the government of the United States of America. I've done this with people of all ages for the last 50 years. Now think about that. Next year it will be the 50th anniversary of the killing of Martin Luther King Jr. and the beginning of the blue-eyed, brown-eyed exercise. When are we going to learn? When are we going to put a stop to this?
White people's number one freedom in the United States of America is the freedom to be totally ignorant about those who are other than white.
We live in the land of the free and the home of the brave. White people are the free, and people of color have to be brave. I want this situation to change. I want it to be such that no black person has to have courage to get up in the morning, any more than I, as a white person, have to have courage to get up in the morning. This is the most important book you or I or anybody else will ever read. I'm an educator. Every educator should refuse to perpetuate the myth of white superiority. There's only one race. It's the human race.
Lamar Smith, Martin Luther King Jr., Medgar Evers, Malcolm X, Fred Hampton, John Brown, Abraham Lincoln, John F. Kennedy, they all wanted liberation for Black and African Americans and contributed as much as they could in their lifetime to shift waves in this country and have been remembered for it. But all these people have one thing in common. They were all assassinated. And I can't help but wonder as I'm making this, who's got it out for me, you know? How many more years will Black people endure before true change happens? I want to change. I know there are others that think the same. So what must we all learn in order to change? What must we develop within ourselves to move past this state of mind that we've all been conditioned to live with for so many years and so many generations? Whether you're aware of it or not, and whether you want it or not, you are a template. You're a walking example, and you're a representation Like, when you wave the American flag or tattoo or have it on your arm, you let everyone know what you symbolize, and the history behind those symbols follow you. And as a black man, I know when people perceive me, I'm putting on an image of what people think other black men look like, talk like, act like, etc. I know my image clashes with what mainstream lenses paint your stereotypical black man as. And unfortunately for black people, especially, we are all held to this standard and perceived far more than any other race. We're seen as responsible for all black individuals. And when you want to help liberate your own race, you hold yourself accountable for how you represent yourself, not only to your community, but outsiders as well. And I wanted to bring this up because if we're going to change the way our world is run, we must first start psychologically. In order to help others, you must first be able to help yourself and understand yourself. Like, why you do the things you do, why you like the things you like, why do you spend the money on the things you buy, why do you wear your hair a certain way, why do you only watch certain shows, and why? Is it because your friends or family like those things, so you do the same? Are you trying to uphold an image maybe that's not appropriate in your workspace? Or are you afraid of feeling vulnerable? Or do you just like following European standards of life? I mean, I don't know. Only you know yourself, and only you know what you want and how far you'll go to get it. But you also know it's spiritually right or wrong. I say spiritually because everything takes some of our time, energy, money, and sanity. Though inside, the real you knows what's truly important and what's not.
Black America in 2016, we spent $2 billion on Air Jordans, $4 billion on liquor and alcohol, $600 million on fast food, and we bought twice the amount of Mercedes-Benzes as white America, although white America has twice the wealth of black folk. So the question becomes, what is it about the Mercedes-Benz that makes it so attractive to African Americans even when they can barely afford it? And it's because it's a status symbol.
That's all.
And one thing we know about oppressed people, when you can enjoy true freedom, you surround yourself with the symbols of that freedom.
Absolutely.
And that's why the Louis bag is so important. That's why our children will kill for Air Jordans. It's not the sneaker, it's what it represents. Right. And if I believe I'm worthless, that means I can only add value to myself by what I put on my body as opposed to what I put in it.
Everyone can be convinced of something. The younger you are, the easier it is to mold you into a certain state of mind. It is extremely hard to change someone's frame of thinking when they've been conditioned to believe something their whole life. Even harder to change when their situation forces them to do things they know are wrong, but they have no choice in the matter. Now, I can't speak for other communities, but the discourse in the black community is, from what I've seen, very clustered. Some black people don't believe or flat out refuse having any correlation or connection to African ancestry.
It is known in the black community that most, not all, but most black people are racist toward white Americans.
You say it's known. What do you mean? Where's your basis for that?
They have been brainwashed over the last 50 years or so to believe that America is a racist society and that white folks are trying to hold them back.
Some black people don't even believe in racism and support white supremacy ideology.
I'm very, very fond of Jerry Jones, and I'm not hiding that from anybody. Is his record perfect? No. But I'm pissed off because he doesn't deserve what just happened. He doesn't deserve it. Our report said he was 14 years old. Another report said he was 15 years old. At minimum, that's 65 years ago. You're going to bring up a picture of Jerry Jones standing at this protest, but you're going to bring up a photo of him when he was 14, 15 years old. 65 or 66 years ago. And by the way, I don't have a problem with the photo. I don't have a problem. If he was 30, 35, 40 years old, that's different.
African Americans and Africans have this kind of divide and separation from one another.
The racism plays a major part, but we don't have to buy into it.
I've been waiting to disagree with you, my brother. I'm waiting patiently. The thing is, even though I want to disagree with you, I get where you're coming from. When I see black people talking about racism, all that stuff, I'm like, what is wrong with these people? You guys have food, you have EBT, all this thing, and you're here shouting about somebody is racist too. Just leave that person and move on. I feel that way. Like, why are they always like complaining? But when Black Lives Matters started happening, like, I sat down, I said, I need to actually know why these people are pained. And if we look at the history, what they've done to them, like if you actually sit down, watch some documentaries, how they were maltreated, I don't think if I'm actually born, I will forgive those people. I don't care. It's easier for us Africans that were raised in Africa to feel like they're complaining because we were raised through struggle. Like, I barely even have water, and you have water, you're complaining. But then, it's not about the basic necessity or about how we are raised. We are raised like, I don't want to say way better. We might not have resources, but there are some way, like our own people will not look down on us or put us behind. So it's in they're nurtured that way. Like, they just can't overlook it. And if you sit down and watch everything that the forefathers have been through for real, I changed my mind. No, they need to be angry. However, they should still move forward.
African American black men and women also have this line in between them as well. And if you're on Twitter, which is just getting worse every day, you'll see the discourse all the time.
Oh, it's funny, I never used that one, bro, but hey, man.
I mean, hey, bro, if you want to date a bunch of Shaniquas, go for it, man.
LaQuisha.
Yeah, like, me and Fresh aren't really down with the brown like that.
Man.
We ain't Night Riders.
Nah,
so
bro, I'm good.
You know, sometimes if they're, you know, Redbone, but like in general, me and Fresh don't dabble in the dark, if you know what I'm saying.
Yep.
Okay, so last one, guys.
The misogyny, the recent disdain towards Megan Thee Stallion.
Megan Thee Stallion has been outspoken about the harassment she has faced since coming forward about being shot. She's been openly mocked by other hip-hop stars and has received death threats on social media. Criticism of the Grammy-winning rapper in the aftermath of the shooting and throughout the trial underscore the larger issue of misogyny targeting black women. Megan also faced criticism from multiple rappers like 21 Savage, Drake, 50 Cent, who all seemingly accused her of lying about being shot. This also happens as WNBA star Brittany Griner, who recently returned home after the prisoner swap with Russia, has been facing criticism and doubt about whether or not she was worthy of that swap. What similarities do you see in these cases with these two black women?
Well, I think you really pointed it out, that it's because they're both black women that they are facing this unique, targeted harm. And what I call that harm is misogynoir, that there's a way that anti-black racist misogyny shows up and is uniquely targeting Megan, uniquely targeting Brittany Griner. And I think we could also add the other Megan to the conversation, Meghan Markle, who also has been going through a lot of public vitriol directed her way.
The most disrespected person in America is the black woman. The most unprotected person in America is the black woman. The most neglected person in America is the black woman. And as Muslims, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us to respect our women and to protect our women. And the only time a Muslim really gets real violent is when someone goes to molest his woman. We will kill you for our woman. I'm making it plain, yes. We will kill you for our woman. We believe that if the white man will do whatever is necessary to see that his woman gets respect and protection, then you and I will never be recognized as men until we stand up like men and place the same penalty over the head of anyone who puts his filthy hands out to put in the direction of our women.
The failure of Black Lives Matter, this new wave of performing movements without actually believing in them just to save face or, again, hold an image for others to see that you care. The hashtags, the Black Square, all this performative nonsense without actual liberation. And black people, we have to repress these thoughts of wanting to be equal. We're all born equal. God gave you the human right to live and prosper, and no man can change that. There is nothing wrong with your skin. You are beautiful because God made you that way. There are no mistakes on you because God doesn't make mistakes. And we've got to stop projecting and belittling our own people because of our own insecurities and anti-black thoughts. We need to have actual conversations with one another, actual conscious conversations if we're going to understand each other and grow. We need to start investing into our own again. Businesses, schools, banks, houses, and hospitals. We pour so much of our wealth into everyone else's pockets, but almost never into our own. And we always help protest for everyone else's suffering, but when it's time to help black people, ain't no one else around. And trying to make it in a system literally designed against us is crazy. And so is waiting on someone to deem you as equal or worthy to experience life. And white people, you may be feeling what is called white guilt if you've made it this far. And if you are, and you're feeling that, it's good. It means you realize there's a problem with our world and you can see a perspective you may never have imagined before. Now, I ask you to not just sit on this guilt. You may feel sad, even weep. But if you ask what you can do for black people, you push back against racism and oppression when it arises. Against friends, family, whoever. Because there is no middle ground when it comes to racism. You're either racist or you're not. And don't speak for us on black issues. Pass us the mic. We can speak for ourselves and we will be heard. You can ride with us, but don't reach for the wheel. And that's about all I wanted to cover. I really hope this monologue was concise and that I was able to hopefully teach and cause people to think a little bit more about the world we live in. And of course, don't let my words be the final justification or the final say or be absolute in anything. Like, please do your own research and always ask questions. Like, don't stop asking questions because we all need to learn from one another. But I want to personally thank Dr. Umar Johnson, Dick Gregory, FD Signifier, Jane Elliott, T. Noor, Dainty Funk, Sean the Black, Turb, Khadija Mbawi, and my beloved Monet for inspiring me to make this video. I want to thank all my ancestors and all black people everywhere for enduring it to make it to where we are today. To the world, as long as you're still alive, you still have time to change. I believe it. And I can't wait to see it. So I hope you have a happy new year, happy holidays, happy birthday, and I'll see you guys when I see you guys. Peace.
Whether or not they're going to face and deal with and embrace this stranger whom they've maligned so long, what white people have to do is try to find out in their own hearts why it was necessary to have a nigger in the first place. Because I'm not a nigger. I'm a man. But if you think I'm a nigger, it means you need it. The question you've got to ask yourself, the white population of this country has got to ask itself, North and South, because it's one country, and for a Negro, there is no difference in the North and the South. There's just a difference in the way they castrate you. But the fact of the castration is the American fact. If I'm not the nigger here, and you invented him, you, the white people, invented him, then you got to find out why.
Where should we be if nobody tried to find out what lies beyond? You never wanted to look beyond the clouds and the stars, or to know what causes the trees to burn, and what changes the darkness into light.
Go beyond your being, mean more than a meaning. Stand among the sitting. Life is only getting harder, better, faster, stronger. Survive for this long, run out a little longer as I sit down to ponder everything I've ever done. With the rising of the moon to the setting of the sun. To plant a garden is to believe in tomorrow. Pray that the flowers will bloom to heal sorrow. We all kids, living out our inner dreams. Sky ain't the limit, riding on this ultralight beam. I hope one day you'll be wise enough to understand everything you've ever wanted has always been in your hands. So don't quit, don't fret, don't regret. Long as you're alive, there's still time left to improve. Techniques can be mastered, my dude. So whether win or lose, always show gratitude to the ones who stick around like stubborn glue. You're on your own path, don't worry about the others. So next time you're crying under heavy covers, trust in God when you can't trust in others.